When Shaquille O'Neal walked through the front door of Magnolia and Vine on a Friday evening in late January, the hostess did not look up. She was writing something in the reservation book with a pen that had a plastic flower taped to the top, and she was mid-sentence with a couple standing at the podium who had arrived 11 seconds before him. The restaurant was on Magazine Street in New Orleans, a long, narrow building with exposed brick on one wall and reclaimed wood on the other. It smelled like butter and garlic and something smoked. The bar ran the length of the left wall. Every seat was taken. Shaq was alone. No security, no assistant. A plain navy Henley, dark jeans, white sneakers. Just a man who wanted to eat at his own restaurant on a Friday night without telling anyone he was coming. He stood behind the couple and waited. His name was on the lease. His money was in the walls. His signature was on the operating agreement filed with the state of Louisiana. He had invested in Magnolia and Vine 14 months ago, not as a celebrity endorsement, but as a real investment in a real chef he believed in a city he had loved since his years at LSU. He had not visited in 5 months. The hostess finished with the couple and looked up. She was young, maybe 22, a name tag that read Priya. She looked at Shaq's chest first, because that is where most people's faces are, and then she looked up, and then she looked up more. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "I do not." She glanced down at the book. "I am so sorry. We are completely booked tonight. The bar is full as well. I can put you on the wait list, but it is going to be at least an hour." "I will wait," Shaq said. Now here is what he noticed while he was standing at the podium. First, a framed photograph on the wall beside the hostess stand showing 2 women standing in front of the restaurant on opening day. Beneath it, a small brass plate read, "Magnolia and Vine, estimated 2023. Founders, Chef Nadine Broussard and Beverly Mateo." Beverly Mateo. That was the name Shaq knew. She was the general manager, the one who had pitched him the investment, the one who had sat across from him in Baton Rouge and said, without flinching, "I am not asking you to put your name on this. I am asking you to put your money behind food that deserves a building." He had liked that sentence enough to write a check. Second, a child's drawing taped to the inside of the hostess stand, not visible to customers, only visible because of his height. A crayon plate of food, a stick figure with a chef hat, the words "Mama Cooking" written in green marker, the G backwards. Third, the manager on the floor was not Beverly Mateo. It was a man Shaq had never seen. Tall, mid-30s, charcoal blazer over a black shirt. He moved through the dining room with the kind of efficiency that looks like competence from a distance and looks like something else entirely when you watch it for longer than 30 seconds. Shaq watched it for longer than 30 seconds, and trust me, you are not going to see this ending coming. Stay with us for the whole video, because the way this story finishes is the reason it needed to be told. Nadine Broussard was born in 1981 in Opelousas, Louisiana. She was the youngest of 4. Her mother, Colette, cooked, not professionally, not for money. Colette Broussard cooked the way some people pray, daily, without negotiation. She made gumbo on Mondays, red beans on Tuesdays. Sundays were for bread, the kind that took 4 hours and filled the house with a smell that Nadine would spend the rest of her life trying to recreate, because the missing ingredient was not flour or yeast, but the specific quality of her mother's patience, which could not be replicated. Colette had one sentence she said every time they cooked together, from the time Nadine was 6 until 11 days before Colette died of a stroke in 2017. "Feed them like they matter, because they do." Nadine went to culinary school in Houston. She worked the line at 4 restaurants in New Orleans over 9 years. She met Beverly Mateo in 2019 at a food industry mixer neither of them wanted to attend. Beverly was an operations specialist. 15 years in restaurant management. The kind of person who understood that a great chef without a great operator is a poet without a publisher. They opened Magnolia and Vine in March 2023. The restaurant had been profitable within 8 months, steadily, the way a restaurant becomes profitable when the food is good and the people running it care about every plate that leaves the kitchen. 3 months ago, Beverly had taken a leave of absence. Her mother in Baton Rouge had been diagnosed with early-onset dementia. Nadine had insisted on the leave. The man in the charcoal blazer had been brought in to cover. His name was Grant Hollister, 36 years old, 11 years in restaurant management, most of it in Dallas. He had gone to bed the night before staring at his ceiling, thinking about a performance review request from the ownership group. The numbers were good. He had increased cover counts by 11%, reduced server overtime by 9%. What the numbers did not show was that he had replaced every piece of Beverly Mateo's system with his own. The regulars who used to be seated by memory were now seated by algorithm. The servers who used to be scheduled by seniority were now scheduled by efficiency metrics. The hostess who used to have discretion about walk-ins, a policy Beverly had established because she believed a restaurant should always have room for the person who shows up without a plan, had been told that walk-ins would be accommodated only after all reserved tables had been turned. Priya had not enjoyed that meeting. She had not said so. She had 22-year-old rent to pay. Shaq moved to the wall near the bar and leaned against it. He was not hiding. He was watching. He watched Grant pass a table where an older couple was trying to get a server's attention. Grant saw them. He did not stop. He delivered a plate to a different table, not because that table had been waiting longer, but because that table was a foretop on a 90-minute reservation, and turning it on time mattered more to the numbers. He watched a server, a woman in her late 20s with a name tag that read Monique, approach Grant near the kitchen pass and say something quietly. Grant's response was the specific volume of a person who has learned to use just enough sharpness that the person being spoken to feels it without anyone at the surrounding tables hearing it. Monique's face went still. She walked away. He watched a family of 5 walk through the front door without a reservation. 2 parents, 3 children, the youngest maybe 4. Priya told them it would be 90 minutes. The mother shifted the 4-year-old to her other hip. They turned to leave. Shaq pushed off the wall. You are going to have to wait just a little longer, though, because Monique Avery was 29 years old and she had been at Magnolia and Vine since opening night, one of the original 4 servers Beverly had hired personally. Beverly had found her working a double at a chain restaurant in Metairie, handling a 12-table section alone with a calm that Beverly recognized as the kind of thing you cannot teach. Monique had a 7-year-old son named Darius. He was the one who had drawn the picture taped inside the hostess stand, the crayon plate, the chef hat, Mama cooking with the backwards G. He had drawn it on opening night, sitting at the bar on a phone book so he could reach the counter, while Beverly stood behind him making sure his crayons did not roll off the edge. Since Grant's arrival, Monique's section had been reduced from 8 tables to 5. Her shifts had been moved from Friday and Saturday to the slower Tuesday and Wednesday rotations. When she had asked why, Grant had said it was about optimization. She had called Beverly once, 3 weeks ago. Beverly had said quietly, I know. I am coming back. Shaq walked to the hostess stand. Priya, where is Beverly Mateo? She is on leave. Family emergency. Mr. Hollister has been managing the floor. And the family that just left, the one with 3 kids, was there really no table? Priya hesitated. Then she said, very quietly, Table 14 is a 2-top that has been empty for 20 minutes. Mr. Hollister holds it for walk-in VIPs. He decides who qualifies. Shaq looked at Table 14. Empty, set, candle lit, waiting for someone Grant Hollister deemed important enough. "Does Chef Nadine know about that policy?" "No, sir." He walked across the dining room toward the kitchen. Grant intercepted, smooth, professional. "Sir, the kitchen is not open to guests. I would be happy to—" "I own this restaurant," Shaq said. He said it the way Philip Harrison had taught him to say things that mattered, once, clearly, and then let the silence do the work. Grant Hollister's face changed, not all at once, in stages, the way understanding arrives when it has to pass through several layers of assumption. Shaq pushed through the kitchen door. Nadine was at the pass, plating a redfish. She looked up. "Shaq." "Chef." "What are you doing here?" "Eating at my restaurant, or trying to. Your floor manager told me there was no room." Nadine put down her tongs. She looked through the window at the dining room, at Grant, at the empty table 14, at Priya, watching from the podium with her hands pressed flat on the reservation book. Nadine wiped her hands on her apron. She walked out of the kitchen. She asked Grant Hollister 4 questions, each one specific, each one building on the last, the way a chef builds a dish. Foundation, structure, heat, finish. Table 14, Monique's schedule. The walk-in policy, the family with 3 children. Grant answered the way a person answers when they know the ground is shifting but have not yet accepted that it has already shifted, with confidence that was thinning at the edges. Nadine listened. Then she said, "Beverly Mateo built a floor that treated every person who walked through that door like they mattered. You replaced it with a system that treats people like math. The math might work. The restaurant does not work without the people." She turned to Priya. "Call that family, the one with 3 kids. Table 14 is theirs tonight." She turned to Monique. "You are back on Friday and Saturday. 8 tables, starting tonight." She looked at Grant with an expression that was not anger and not contempt. The expression of a person who understands exactly how a mistake was made and will not allow it to continue for one more service. "You are good at numbers," Nadine said. "I need someone who is good at people. Beverly comes back in 2 weeks. Until then, I will run the floor myself." Now here is the part that nobody in that restaurant had any way of knowing. Beverly Mateo had been building something else, quietly, on her own time. A community meal program that operated out of Magnolia and Vine's kitchen every Monday morning when the restaurant was closed. 40 meals, packed in containers labeled with a handwritten note, a different note each week, always the same closing line. "You matter. This plate says so." The meals went to a transitional shelter 6 blocks away. Beverly paid for the ingredients herself. The only person who knew was Priya, because Priya came in early on Mondays to help pack, because Beverly had asked her once if she wanted to, and Priya had said yes without asking what it paid. Grant had canceled the Monday program during his 2nd week. He had found the ingredient invoices, flagged them as unauthorized expenditures, and discontinued the deliveries. He had not told Nadine because he considered it an operational correction. Priya had gone to the shelter on the first Monday after it stopped and explained, personally, that the meals would resume when Beverly came back. The shelter coordinator, a woman named Ruth, had nodded and said, "We will be here." Shaq learned about the meal program 20 minutes later, sitting at table 14, eating redfish that Nadine had cooked for him herself. Priya told him, not because he asked, because she had been holding it for 3 months and the weight had become heavier than the risk of letting it go. When she finished, he said, "The Monday program restarts this week. I will cover the ingredients for the next 12 months. And when Beverly comes back, you tell her the notes stay. Every plate, every week." Priya pressed her lips together, not to hold something in, to hold something steady. Shaq finished his meal. He left cash on the table, enough to cover the check 3 times over, all of it marked for Monique. He stopped at the hostess stand on his way out. "The drawing," he said, "inside the stand, the chef hat and the plate. Monique's son drew that. Opening night." "It stays," Shaq said. "No matter who is running this floor, that drawing stays." He walked out into Magazine Street. He stood on the sidewalk and looked through the window. Nadine was on the floor now, moving between tables with the ease of a woman who understood that a dining room was not a spreadsheet. It was a kitchen table, a bigger one, but the same thing. A family of 5 came through the door, 2 parents, 3 children, the youngest on her father's hip. Priya smiled and walked them to table 14. A server named Monique Avery learned that the picture her son drew on opening night would stay, because some things are not decorations. They are proof that someone was here, and that it mattered. A chef named Nadine Broussard learned that her mother's sentence applied not just to the people at the tables, but to the people behind them, the servers and the hostesses, and the women who pack 40 meals on Monday mornings with handwritten notes. Because a restaurant is not a building, it is everyone who keeps it standing. A hostess named Priya learned that holding the truth for 3 months had not been weakness. It had been patience. And patience is not the same as silence. It is silence waiting for the right moment to speak. And Shaquille O'Neal walked to his car and said, out loud, to no one, "Don't be a reaction, be a response." He had responded. Nadine had responded, and a table that had been held empty for the wrong reasons was full now, the way it was always supposed to be. You matter. This plate says so. Colette Broussard would have understood that sentence. She had been saying it her whole life, in every pot of Monday gumbo and every loaf of Sunday bread. She just never wrote it down. Beverly did. Drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from. And tell us about the restaurant, the kitchen, the table where someone once made you feel like you mattered before you even ordered. If this story hit you, hit the like button, not because we asked, but because Beverly Mateo packed 40 meals every Monday with a handwritten note and never told anyone. And that kind of quiet deserves to be loud. Subscribe and join this community, because we tell these stories the way they deserve to be told, with every detail, every person, every layer intact. The next video is already waiting for you. We will see you there. Paste your script.